You took classes at church, you listen to podcasts. A lot of people don't do those things to help them evolve, let alone in the marriage. And so as you find yourself, either one of you or both of you, as you find yourselves evolving, you really do, you're two or one. You do evolve as a couple.
So what's real love really look like? You ever wonder that? Well, stay tuned because we have Leland and Michelle Murphy, and they are showing you and telling you what real love looks like.
Welcome to Get It Together. And I am Corey, and
I'm Steven.
And he's Steven. And this is part 2 of a series that we have going on with couples. This particular couple, this part 2, is Leland and Michelle Murphy, and they are talking to us about their lives. And if you haven't seen the first episode, part 1, check that out. But part 2, we're talking about communication, intimacy, and finance. As you guys know, we always like to talk to couples about intimacy, communication, and finance. So we're going to start
with those are the 3 root systems that impact almost every couple out
the pillars. Those are the pillars,
pillars.
Yes, of a marriage, and actually in most relationships, most close relationships. So we're going to dive into communication with Leland and Michelle Murphy. Thank you guys for staying with us and doing a part 2 with us. Let's talk about communication, because if they've been married 32 years and known each other 36 years. So we know that we evolve as human beings, and we definitely evolve in marriage.
That's right.
So how did your communication evolve? Or did your communication evolve? Have you ever had a clash in your communication?
Yeah. And who's the communicator? Who's like the really good communicator?
Me?
You are.
I'm the one that will bring it to the table. If there's something that needs to be talked about, I'm going to him and I'm saying, okay, let's lay our cards on the table. We need to kind of like get a clear sight as to what we're talking about here. We kind of started with, just making sure he has the time, I have the time, because communication is all about you not only being physically being there, but mentally being there. Are you ready to talk? And so if he's not ready to talk because he's got things going on, or I have things going on, we have learned to give each other cues and kind of like just read that. And if it's a good time, then we talk. If it's not, we kind of, put a pin in it and we come back to it. So that's the first.
It's beautiful.
That's so healthy. That's so smart to give each other cues.
Yeah.
Because you got to know where you're at.
How did you get there?
Yeah,
how did that evolve?
I think it just evolves. We haven't been super strategic about it. And of course, we've taken, courses at church, and you talk about communication, you listen to podcasts and things like that.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's just really evolved because you ask is like, how did we get to where we are? Are we good communicators? I think we're good communicators, that we could do better, but she really likes to talk in detail, and I tend to talk in the big picture thing. So
We're so much alike as a couple.
Yeah, we're the same.
We are absolutely the same.
Identical in that, yeah.
Unbelievable.
So,
yeah.
But Leland, here's the thing: when someone is an overviewer and looks at the big picture, they have to be, which you are, it obviously shows, and same with him, you have to be respectful of the person who likes the details, because that they can't get past if they can't get through the details, they can't get past the communication, because it's like, I need to know more. So, and you did say it didn't just evolve, because you did say you took classes at church, you listen to podcasts. A lot of people don't do those things to help them evolve, let alone in the marriage. And so as you find yourself, either one of you or both of you, as you find yourselves evolving, you really do, you're two or one, you do evolve as a couple.
Yeah.
So there's a beautiful thing in seeing that you can understand where she's at. Now, did you always understand that? I mean, I can remember times where we would argue because, like, I just told, no, it's not enough. You got to break it down. Was there ever a point, not necessarily arguing, but a point of tension where she just needed to know more, or or there was no more and she wanted to know more. You know?
It definitely, it's taken many, many years to get to where we are now. I think I had to learn that Leland is very different in how he communicates. It's nothing wrong with it. It's just different.
Mm-hmm.
He's the kind of guy that, just give me the bullet points. And I'm the kind of girl where I want, give me every line, every detail, every color, And so I had to learn to kind of like condense what like get the most important things out there. And if he's still got his eyes open, I'll give him a little bit, ask him a little bit more. But I had to learn to kind of like just shorten it.
This is golden. This is precious. This is so critical, ladies and gentlemen.
We call those chatty Cathys. The chatty Cathys have to learn how to not chat so much.
Exactly.
You talked about, when you even asked us to do this, I'm thinking about how we've gotten to where we are. A lot of it is not digging your heels in, because she even said it last week, maybe. I need you to listen to me when I'm talking to you completely. Put your phone down and give me your full attention. Mm-hmm. That's really hard for me, because it's sitting here looking at you is a little bit of a challenge for me. I'm always my mind is going. So I have to push myself out of my comfort zone to give her what she needs to get through that conversation. Sometimes my brain goes to something else and she's talking, but I'm focused on her. She doesn't know that. So you have to really give in a little bit. And that's one of those things that if she said, hey, let's stop doing that, I'd be like, okay, I'm done. Let's do it. But you really have to just give a lot in a relationship. And that's part of it. It's very uncomfortable for me to listen to her talk sometimes about stories or about situations, because she gives me details that I can draw a picture between in my mind, but she wants to talk about every one. For me, this and this, and I can figure it out in between. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, that's so good what you just said. I have to take my thoughts, I have to take my mind and focus it, and it can be challenging. And I feel that's him too. But I think that happens a lot with focused human beings, because they're focused on something and they're doing something, and it's like, okay, now you want me to take the detail. I can do an overview and get it done. Meanwhile, the people who are more detailed and they're successful, they are into all the increments and all the little, I call them granules of sand, granular. Yeah. Details. And so that is a challenge, but it's a compliment too, because it brings you both to a level that you would have never experienced if you weren't together.
Exactly. You learned how to make it work.
Yeah. Instead of fighting against it, as couples out there, instead of fighting against that, use that as a compliment to who you are and say, okay, now I learned how to do it this way, or I know how to communicate this way. Yeah. I just want to say thank you for that, because that's some deep stuff right there that you actually have to make yourself, So now we want to talk about intimacy, and what does that look like in your marriage? Where do you find the most intimate parts of your marriage are the strongest? Does that make sense? Like, is it communication? Is it sexual? Is it finance? Is it around other people? Like, a lot of times people can be intimate in a group, like having a tight knit group of people who have great conversations, which I got to tell you, Michelle and I and a couple other women, we had that tight knit group that was a very intimate group of women who could just talk. So we're going to talk to Leland and Michelle about what that looks like for them. So you guys, what does intimacy look like when you think about the strength of that in your marriage?
The first thing I think about is the fact that before the children came, it was just myself and Leland. And if we don't take care of the couple and make sure we're good, then we can't be mom and dad. It's that plain. I think our kids understood from an early point, when mom and dad are together and we're either talking or we're by ourselves in another room or what have you, that was our time. And it wasn't done in a mean way, like, don't, come knocking on the door or whatever. If it's an emergency, yes. But they knew if mom and dad stepped away, that meant you guys stay put. Dad and I have some things to either discuss or whatever we're going to do. And we put that into our kids' hearts at an early age. So growing up, they just knew. And so that allowed us to always have that sort of like couple time without all of a sudden having to force it on our kids, because we installed that early on. So that's always been a part of our marriage from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. I think we're most intimate when we're just talking and sharing and just intimate conversations, being vulnerable. What's on your mind? What's on your mind? What are your goals? So I know she enjoys that. And to me, that is probably when we're most in tune, is when we're just shut out everything else and concentrate on each other. We've always had a pretty standard date night on Friday nights. And don't know where I got the idea from, not unique or something. We just started doing it, but that's usually for her. And I know that really talks about intimacy. When I let her speak her mind and get real intimate in her head, the physical intimacy always comes.
Yeah.
So
that's strong. That's
I
strong.
always tell them that, you need to date me throughout the day in order for anything else to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
but
I want him to be connected to me always, not in a sense like physically it's not possible because he's at work, I'm with the kids, whatever. But we call each other quite a few times throughout the day, just checking on you, hey, how you doing, kind of thing. And so when he comes home, it's not like, well, let me tell you about my day.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
He already knows about my day because we have talked to each other throughout the day.
Yep.
And so that's another way of us being intimate by talking to each other on the phone. And it doesn't have to last that long. It's just, and we always have I love yous in there. Yeah. Just want to make sure you're good. How's your day going so far? Just questions like that. And, nothing heavy.
It shows that the intimacy is the communication, how you communicate. So for our audience, when we talk about intimacy, you've heard us say intimacy is not a sexual thing. It's the depth of the finances, the communication, the raising of the family. That's where, like Michelle said, when you stay connected like that, the sexual or the physical, it's going to happen because you've invested in the intimacy of every aspect of your life. So it's beautiful that you can explain it like we talk during the day. Yeah. So he's not coming home going, what happened in your day? Or you're not going, I can't talk right now. You don't understand. No, you do understand. So that connection keeps it light, keeps the heavy out. Even if it's a tough day, I'm going to talk to my wife during the day and we're going to help make this better. She's going to be encouraging. We are the wind beneath each other's wings, in other words,
Really, for most of our lives, we've had kids. So we were married for 2 years before our first was born. So we've always we probably by default have a little more communication because we've always been on that same page because we're always trying to raise the kids together or raise our family. So that part has come by just being in that situation, I guess.
Out of necessity, we had to communicate. You have 4 children and they all are involved in some sort of like school stuff or sports or friends so you got kids going in 4 different directions. We had to communicate who's going to pick up whom, because if we didn't communicate, somebody's going to be sitting at school
waiting to be picked up.
Because we didn't talk about who's going to do what.
Mrs. Murphy, your daughter's still here. Yeah. But again, that still is intentional. You guys have made it flow so easily. And sometimes there's people out there who they get so involved in their kids, they forget about each other, and then when the kids are gone, they don't know each other. They're like, who are you? So it's a beautiful thing that you intentionally, even though Leland's like, well, it just happened. No married couples. He's just gifted apparently, because that's a lot of couples. It's hard work to take off that mom hat and be that wife again. And obviously your mother and father and a husband and wife, but sometimes people get so wrapped up into one dimension of themselves.
What's fascinating here is as you look in the rearview mirror and all the years that are behind you guys, the 36 years you've known each other, the thing that is interesting is there's no energy here of a lack of commitment of the two of you. It just seems like you understand we're together forever. How did you create that? Where's that energy coming from? Because it reads in this whole conversation.
That's a great question. And I thought about that too over the week as well. You know, we just really made a commitment that we're going to be with each other, and divorce is not an option. You know, I think when you have a goal of working towards the same goal, it becomes easier. We've always been intimately involved in each other's lives through communication, through kids and everything like that. So it's just hard to imagine not being together. That's part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I have been a Murphy longer than I have been a Holmes, my maiden name. And so, you know, I cannot imagine my life without Leland. We grew up together, you know, as young adults, and here we are, senior citizens.
Yeah, we have our AARP cards.
Yeah.
But you are looking at a transition into another phase of your life. I mean, you guys are essentially empty nesters, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about that. How's that going? And what do you guys see for the future for the two of you?
You know, most people, I guess, they feel a sense of loss when their children are like being launched out into the world. We saw it as a sense of accomplishment that our kids could be
success.
Be independent and want to leave our house and spread their wings and do their thing. It would have been a problem if they were like, no, we're just gonna like go down in the basement and live forever and be with you guys forever. No, that's not gonna work. So I think we welcomed it. We knew once that last kid was gone that our love story as a couple would then come back up to the top surface. You know, beforehand, us being a couple, we had to kind of like, you know, put it in and tuck it in here and here when kids were involved and still living in our house. Now all the kids are gone, and it gives us more time for us.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
I totally understand and can relate to why people have a midlife crisis and they go off the deep end, because you're spending so much time with your kids, and then you look up and you go, hey, who are you? Now, there's a little bit of that with us even. So we're kind of like, oh, wow, we don't have kids anymore. What are we going to do? Yeah. So there's a little bit of that. But if you're not grounded in your faith, I could easily go out and buy an expensive sports car and do what everybody else does. I guess we had an image, a model through my parents and her parents where that was not an option. Our goal was always to launch our kids. Our goal was to get our kids through college, and then you're on your own. And that's been their expectation. My youngest right now is just graduated in May. She's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I'm going, you're going to figure it out. But you got to launch them, because I always said our home is after you graduate, our home is a transitional spot. You hit a rough spot, you hit a rough patch, come home, we'll figure it out, you move again, but you're not going to stay there.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Wow. It was their home. It's still their home, but it's our living space now. And they're welcome to come back anytime. They're welcome to come back and land there for months or whatever it takes to get moving again.
But they've got to have a plan.
But you got to have a plan. The goal is to keep moving.
Do you realize that you're putting in place another generation of you, which is beautiful, because they're not needy. Their peers are probably not where they're at. The majority of their peers are the stay in the basement, I can't live on my own, or whatever the case may be. So literally the responsibility of raising those children, putting into society someone that we want to take care of us when they're older, you know, as opposed to some of the crazies out there. Because really they're going to, when you raise, again, it's the hardest career you will ever have, is to raise children, but it's the most gratifying and the most rewarding. But when you're doing that, you're actually putting society's next generation out there So what you expect coming out of that generation is what you put into it. So it's a beautiful thing that I'm glad the Murphy kids are out there, and they're hanging around with the Burgess kids, and they're going to be at a certain level that other kids are not going to be at. But again, they're adults.
Well, and the other thing I'm thinking about as well is, and if I can just speak directly to Leland, mano y mano, I just want to say bravo to you, because again, you know, we live in a society where, again, they're trying to tell people that the dad is not important, or the father or the husband is not important. And I got to tell you something, what you guys have done is absolutely incredible. It's such a huge blessing on planting your nuclear family and launching all 4 of these kids, equally as well as Michelle and Corey. What they have done as mothers is, you know, stay-at-home moms are not celebrated like they should be. It is the toughest job. I tell Corey all the time, your job was harder than mine, you know? So speaking to that mano y mano thing, Leland, what would you say to the men out there in terms of advice, building their families?
Without using too many cliches, but one is be a man, be a protector, and be a provider. And in doing so, be loving and caring. You know, we should be able to be warriors and fight for what we need and what we want and what we have, but you can also get on the floor and cuddle with your daughter. So I think what our culture has done is we forced us into this manlyhood that's overtly manly, that they can't be sensitive. But at the same time, you know, when you look at biblical examples, you look at Jesus, you look at every example, most of the guys who were successful were tough men who would cut your head off. But at the same time, they knew how to nurture their wives and a woman. So that's the tough part. We didn't teach that. The culture doesn't teach that. And you're right. I hate the fact that 90% of the commercials, the dad is the goofball. The dad can't turn on the TV. He can't work. I always hated that image, even in the cartoons and the shows that my kids used to watch. I hated that image. So subconsciously, I probably worked against that in my home, just to not let them know that dad's a goofball. Well, you know what? Dad doesn't know everything. Dad doesn't know everything, but dad's going to figure it out, and he's going to protect his kids and his wife with all the energy and strength that he has.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'd have to say, I was going to say to Michelle, so Michelle, you had a career for 8 years, running all over the place, obviously relocating here and there. And then you had a career of raising 4 children. Tell us, we know which career was most satisfying. I'm pretty sure it was raising the children, but speak to those women out there who are doing them both at the same time and struggling with that, because there's a voice out there that needs to be heard.
First of all, I really do give a lot of applause to the women who find themselves in a position of having to work outside of the home and raise their children. My mom did that. You know, I was a latchkey kid, and, you know, so I saw both sides to that, you know, and I knew for me personally, I did not want to necessarily be a woman that kind of just put careers first. I knew once we got married, we were going to start a family, and that meant something had to change. And so we made a decision as a couple that, you know, somebody's going to stay home. And I was like, I think I want to do that. You know, I want to do that for my kids, because I wish my mom had done that with me. And, you know, I wanted, you know, when you know better, you do better. And I wanted my kids to have the best version of me. The best version of me couldn't have been someone who was putting in 40 hours at work, coming home, and all I would have the energy to do was to like make a dinner, you know, clean the children up and go to bed. I wanted more of what I could give my kids. So it wasn't a hard decision, but it was a decision I had to like continue to like convince myself this is the right thing to do, because the work got harder and harder as we have more kids. There were times early on that when Leland would come home and I would just unload.
Mm.
Mainly just to kind of vent.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Also,
mhm.
I just wanted to communicate with another adult.
Yeah.
And but I also knew, because he was in sales, that's all he did all day was talk to people all day long. And so I knew I couldn't just, as soon as he walks through the door, just unload on him.
Mhm,
I had to give him that time to decompress, and then we could have a better conversation.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
so he made my job of being a stay-at-home mom really easy, because I didn't
mhm.
have to concern myself with, the part of like, how's the money gonna come in? And I mean, the money came in, I had to manage it,
Mhm.
but he made it.
Yeah.
And we just always worked, we're in yoke together. We always
Mm.
on
Mhm.
the same path. We had different roles. We respected each other, and the fact that he respected me as a mom, it made me feel so
Mhm.
good. And so,
Mhm.
when I was doing the right thing. Yeah,
Mhm.
he validated, me.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that made me want to continue getting up every morning, early morning, and doing the best I could with my kids. Because
Mm.
I knew, as you said before, we're raising the next generation,
Mhm. Yeah.
and what you put in is what you get out.
Oh yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
So true.
Wow.
So true. This is beautiful. I don't know what our timing is.
So yeah, we're getting close. So if we could, I guess a nice wrap on this would be, tell us a little about your kids, their names, their
Yeah.
ages, what are they doing?
I want to know their personalities.
And then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
So start with the oldest, or should we go to the oldest or
Yeah,
youngest?
oldest to youngest.
Oldest to youngest.
You got to
Tell
respect the
us,
first. You got to respect the first.
what are they doing?
Okay, well, we're gonna split it in half.
Okay.
I'll do the older two, and you
Well,
do like.
you can do it. We can just tag on each other.
Okay,
Just-
all right.
And how old is he?
So-
Their age too, and what they're doing. Yeah.
Okay, so the oldest one is Yasmin.
Mhm.
She's a photographer, and she was living in Waco, Texas, and she has migrated back to Tennessee, and so she's now working for a company here in Nashville, doing great. She is, I say, Yasmin is the person that is a young woman rambling around in an old person's mindset.
That's good.
She just has an old soul. We nickname her the vintage kid, because
She's the one that sells.
she goes to estate sales, and
Oh.
she's
And
a
how old is
very,
she? How old is Yasmin?
she's 30. She's our
30.
oldest.
So yeah, she's 30. She's the art. They're all artistic, but she's the most artistic one. She is an old soul, and she is really a penny pincher. So she likes to save her money, and she, brags about how she gets a dress for $5 and it looks like $1 million. So
Yeah, and she has a very entrepreneurial spirit.
Mm.
She
Mhm.
has 2 homes. She's working on her 3rd home.
Wow.
Good for her.
And she rents out the other 2. And I think with her, she wants to have as many homes as possible, so that she doesn't have to really depend on a
Smart.
paycheck from someone.
That's
Very
awesome.
smart. Yeah.
Wow.
Smart.
Who's next?
Madison is 27.
Yeah.
Mhm.
She lives in Brooklyn. She works for HBO. She's on the creative side as well. But when you see those ads and things for some of the HBO shows like Succession, things like that,
Game of Thrones.
she does the social media aspects. They have teams that get together. She's
Wow.
actually won an Emmy last year for one short film they did for Succession. So that was really cool. She's very nonchalant about everything. She doesn't tell you what's going on, but she's a great personality. Everybody loves her. She's the life of the party.
I mean, she works hard even when no one's watching.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which is what I really love about
She's the
her.
duck underwater, going like this.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's so good. That's so good.
And then our son, Machen, is, why am I forgetting their age?
I don't know.
24?
24.
24. You guys put me on the spot. He's 24. He's in transportation logistics, like his mom's supply chain. He works for a large trucking company that works in distribution and things like that. He is good combination of both of us, somewhat introspective,
Mhm.
very detail oriented, but he's a thinker and contemplator.
Wow.
Now, where's he live?
Genuine guy.
He lives in St. Petersburg.
Oh yeah, he lives in St. Pete, Florida.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Definitely a genuine guy, and he's one of those guys that, you know, he once he's your friend for life.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Is he a little bit more advanced in age as well, or is he more like 24, or is he more like 30?
No, he's way more advanced in age. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, he had an opportunity to play lacrosse at an all-boys high school, which is where he went, and he was a boarding student, and it was a hard transition for us, but it's amazing the good things that came out of that. So he's really a man's man, but I think he has taken on some of what I said before, that's sensitive enough to be a gentleman as well.
I mean, he has 3 sisters, so
Yeah, so that's
he got no choice.
Right. Awesome.
And then our youngest, Autumn, she's 22, a recent grad at UT, from UT. All our kids went to UT.
The Tennessee, the real UT.
She is doing a short stint up in New York, in Brooklyn. She's communication, advertising major, and so she's got one more week in New York, and she's coming home to figure things out. Landing pad. So she'll figure it out. You know, Autumn Grace, she is probably the most brilliant of our kids, but she doesn't want it.
She doesn't realize it either.
Yeah, sometimes she doesn't realize how special she is. She beats herself up a lot because I think she always wants to give the best version of herself to people. So she's always critical and always hard on herself. But she is the most loving, funny, smart, and she's always inquisitive, and she wants to make sure everybody else is good.
She's extremely smart and extremely sociable, which is a really cool combination. You don't always see that. You get one or the other.
That's true.
She has
it would surprise me if any of your children were not sociable, because the both of you are so sociable.
Absolutely.
I mean, truly, it would surprise me if you said, no, they're introvert. They don't talk to anybody, because that's not who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
They couldn't even live in the house with you if that was the case.
So now, Leland, you're in the real estate business. So how can people contact you if they have a house to sell or they want to buy something? Do you have, you're going to put your things down, and we'll put all your information down below.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, I work in the Knoxville area, work in commercial as well.
Hold on. That's Knoxville, Tennessee, for people around the world.
Yes.
Which is one of the fastest growing places in the country.
Yes. Yeah.
One of the biggest migration areas. So it's a great opportunity right now. Inventories are really low, but I also do investments. I started in the business of investment properties. So I'm a second career. I like to do a little bit of everything. I just like to work with people who are willing to work with me and just help them find a good house and a good property.
And how do they reach you?
Pardon?
How do they reach you?
Leland Murphy at gmail.com. Leland Murphy at gmail.com. Leland Murphy at gmail.com. You can go to lelandmurphy.com. I have a website.
Great.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap up this wonderful, wonderful cast with Leland and Michelle, it has been phenomenal.
Thank you
so much. The nuclear
yes.
family is God's plan for humanity. Mm-hmm. The nuclear family is and always has been God's plan for humanity.
And like they said, back when we were growing up, it wasn't called the nuclear family. It was just called family. So let's just bring family back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And for those of you who are watching,
our pleasure. Thank you guys, and continue success.
Oh, well, thank you. We want you to comment, like, share this podcast with others that you know would need this. Subscribe also, yes. Leland and Michelle Murphy from Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.
Take care.
Take care, guys.